Okay, this is going to be a deck tech for the deck I've been running recently. It's Dragon Harpoon, Scorpion Weenie, Dishonor. It's a very aggressive Dishonor deck. I've gone through a bunch of different evolutions of it. The core of the deck is 30 and 30. Well, 30 and 29. Be 30 when Sadako comes out, I think. I guess really, I've kind of decided that this is core. So it's pretty simple, pretty standard Scorpion stuff. You know, 3 Fate Worse Than Death, 3 Assassination, 3 Calling in Favors, 3 Court Games, 3 For Shame, 3 Force Edict, 1 I Can Swim, 3 Way of the Scorpion, 3 Cloud of the Mind, Kachiko, 2 Cunning Magistrates, and 2 Kami Unleashed. And this really just is all of the um, removal, counterspell, attachment hate, and dishonor you can, and disable and dishonor that you can run, that you can roll into one Scorpion deck. The Kami Unleashed are either to get rid of problem things with Ring of Void, or dishonor certain things sometimes for other effects, or to close out the game with Air Ring. So really, I guess you could use it for water too. Sometimes water will be really good, but basically you're either using it to disable your opponent's stuff on the board, or you're using it to win the game. Cunning Magistrate obviously works really well with this deck. Assassination is great removal. Fate Worse Than Death can be great removal and is great for doing dual honor loss stuff with, you Fate Worse Than Death or Guy, you get the unopposed, then they die and lose another honor. And then all of this other stuff is just standard good stuff. I'd really like to get up to 2 or 3 I Can Swim. I think 2 would be fine because this deck likes to low bid a lot and then switch later. But it's dead till then. That's hard. In the Dynasty deck, we've got Bayushi Liar, Bayushi Manipulator, Blackmail Artist, Court Novice, Favored Niece, 2 Fawning Diplomats, Mia Mystic, Sociologist. This is a really good solid core. The only things that you're trying to buy out of here is Bayushi Liar and Sociologist. It's fine to buy Court Novices, they're good. Manipulators are good as long as you're attacking in military, not political, because they just get court and gamed and are sad. Blackmail Artist is really good, but I don't like it in the early game that much, really. I'm looking for it in the mid to late game when I can threaten them hard. Also, I'd like to burn through as much of their removal and all the clouds that I can, etc., before I get a Blackmail Artist. Favorite Niece, Fawning Diplomat, Mia Mystic, all just utility pieces. Oh yeah, and you should note, of course, all the really cheap courtiers here. We've got 1, 3, 4, 12 courtiers that are 2 cost and under. I guess it's not that much. And then Favorable Ground, Imperial Storehouse, Hidden Moon Dojo are also all just really solid holdings that let you do lots of great things like draw cards and have tricks. Okay. So to get this particular version of the deck, Poon, Aggro, Dishonor, we've cut to 2 Calling in Favors for Let Go. I'm testing Deceptive Offer. A lot of people don't like this card. I was initially one of those people. I think it's better in this deck than it is in most decks because it pressures Dishonor so hard and so early. It it's an interesting one. I haven't made up my mind about it. I sort of think that the better your opponent, the less likely you are to be able to get great use out of it. You just have to be very careful when you play it because if you ever play it and they just use an inconsequential ability that they were going to use anyway, like let's say you trade it for like the Dragon Stronghold and you still lose the battle or you don't break the problems, whatever it was that you were trying to do, it's basically a terrible card in that case. So you got to be really smart about when you use it. So that can be challenging. But I like it. I think it works well with the theme of the deck. I think it's pretty good. 2 Spies at Court, which I have found to be incredibly good in this deck. It's really easy to win political conflicts over the course of the game. Well, not always, but oftentimes it's pretty easy to win a couple at least with an undishonored guy, and then bam, boom, you're really good. Hawk Tattoo disrupts plans a lot. It's really strong. Also can set up I Can Swim, and can set up Fate Worse Than Death, can set up Shoju, and some other things. So it's great. And 2 Ancient Master is just really solid 1/1 for 1 that can randomly steal the favor. It defends Shameful extremely well. And it gets dishonored, but whatever. You just attack within military, most things. And just be careful about when you play it against other Scorpions. Really use it primarily as a favor stealer against other Scorpions because they're just going to dishonor it happily. with their Way of Scorpion that is sitting dead in their hand. And to the conflict deck, we've added 3 Shoju. I really don't buy Shoju that much. He is really good. He's great with Talk Tattoo. And if you feel like the game state demands it, go for it. But the reason I don't buy him that much is because I'm mostly trying to get 3 to 4 guys out, or two to 3 guys out, and 4 would be ideal per turn. And I often don't want to put a lot of fate, if any, on them because I'm attacking meditations, or because I don't want them to use the Void Ring on me, or because I just want to buy a lot of stuff and I don't have enough money. So I don't have a lot of opportunities where I'm happy to put Shoju out with like 3 fate, or if I do, I often just would rather put out Kachiko. However, if you're getting to a late stage of a tournament and you have good control of the game, but you're losing on tiebreakers because you haven't been breaking a lot of provinces, it's great to buy Shoju or Kachiko and just start beating down the doors because they will break provinces pretty easily on their own. As long as you can protect them, they don't have like tons of cards in their hand or anything. And then I added 3 Marauding Oni. Works super well with Scorpion. The forced honor loss is just so useful for making sure you stay just under them. It can be too costly, but if you're careful, it's usually not a big deal. In fact, it usually kind of helps more than it hurts. And 4 Military and Scorpion is just bonkers. If they assassinate, you're like, woohoo, you assassinated something! That's awesome! I probably win! Because Assassinate is not a card you really want to use against this deck for the most part. And then Sinister Soshi to round out my Shugenja count. Really, I might even want one more. Man, it's like now is the hard part. I have Miyako in here. Really, I feel like I should have Shiori. Shiori just does not seem like a good idea in this deck. I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like Shiori needs an ambush. But anyway, Sinister Soshi to round out my Shugenja count. Also randomly synergistic with Bayushi Shoju and good at cock blocking their conflict attempts, but most importantly is a cheap Shugenja, lets you cast Cloud. And then 1 Miyako. I would like 3 Miyakos, I just don't really want to cut anything right now. And I'd also like 3 Defawning Diplomats, but it's the same deal. I'm really pretty happy with where I am. Marauding Oni just is the most likely cut slot. I could cut a Manipulator, I guess. Marauding Oni is just, it's like I don't want to cut a non-courtier though. I'm only running 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17 courtiers that I actually want to buy. And that's not that much. Oni is super good. It's if you play it with Hidden Moon Dojo, you don't have to lose the honor unless you want to. It is a 2 cost for 4 force, which is immune to Shameful Display. So it's really nice for hunting for Shameful Display, knowing that you're not going to give them an honor and you're not going to lose one yourself. It's just a really strong card for Scorpion specifically. I don't think it's that strong for other clans. So that's where I'm at right now. The game plan of this deck. Okay, so that's the deck. That is the deck. And of course I'm on Secret Cache, Upholding Authority, Pilgrimage, Shameful Display, Rally to the Cause. Rally almost always goes on the Stronghold. And Upholding Authority is difficult to farm because it's only 3 province strength, so they often run the risk of either just losing the ring because they didn't attack with very much force, or breaking it accidentally. You know, or like if they overcommit to the attack, then they want the ring effect, then they're probably breaking. And if they don't commit to the attack very much, then you can sort of choose whether or not you want to defend it. This deck does like to trade cards when on turn 2 or 3. After you've hopefully hit them with the Ring of Earth 2 times and low bid them, it's pretty acceptable to trade cards, especially if you spies at court. So Upholding Authority really encourages people to trade cards because they either don't get the ring because they didn't attack with a lot, or you don't defend because they did attack with a lot, and then you get their cards anyway. So I find Upholding Authority to be pretty good. I just try to get it broken as soon as possible, and it's totally acceptable to hawk Poon things into the battle to make it break. Totally acceptable. And yeah, when it breaks, I get to look at their hand, I get to see what they can do, I get to discard their shit, and then I'm going to go and trash them. And every single attack after that is going to have to go to Secret Cache, Pilgrimage, or Shameful Display. And if a second one has to break, I will usually, I would really like to have Pilgrimage Shameful, or no, I'd really just like to have Pilgrimage Shameful. Secret Cache is really good, but if one of them has to break and you have some input about which one breaks, I think Secret Cache is the best one to break, simply because Shameful Display. Wait, that's not even true. No, just kidding. Let Shameful Display break because it is really good in the late game. However, if they have dishonored characters, they can just attack with dishonored characters, and it's not worth running. It's Shameful's ability is not really worth doing if you're honoring one of your guys and you're not dishonoring one of their guys, unless you're about to die or the stats like really really matter. So ideally, Shameful breaks and Upholding Authority breaks, and you're left with either I get no ring effect unless I hugely overcommit, or they get a free card tutored from the top five once per turn when I attack, which is super strong in a Dishonor deck. Right. So the game plan. The game plan is to make them lose at least 3 honor turn one. So that means unopposed air, unopposed earth is the ideal. That's the best. The dream is you put out 2 guys, or you've got 1 guy in hand. You attack, you kill their whatever they have. You kill it. You fate worse than death it. You for shame it to bow it. I use for shame almost exclusively for bows because this deck doesn't have a lot of pumps, and so what I'm really relying on to win enough conflicts to win the game is to bait out their pumps and then bow them. So use all your control to just shit on them turn one. Try to cockblock whatever they're doing. Try to get that double unopposed with the air ring and the earth ring. And hopefully they've gone down, they've used a bunch of cards, and hopefully you've used fewer cards. And so now you have like maybe like really your ideal situation is maybe they use 4 cards, they're down to 5. Maybe you use 2 cards, you're down to 7. Then you earth ring them, so they're down to 4, and you're up to 8. And then when you one bid them on turn 2, then you have the same number of cards, but they're at 3 honor. You also have to look at, you can't always one bid them on turn 2. You have to look at what you have. If you've got some fate worse than death, you've got some for shame, you've got some wave of the scorpion, you've got some things to dishonor people, you've got an assassinate. That's a potent set of tools for killing 3 people's worth of or 3 honors worth of 3 honor from an opponent. If you have like a bunch of like cloud the mind and you have cunning magistrate, you got like let go, I can swim, deceptive offer, like you're probably not going to kill them in one turn with that. So then maybe just bid 3 or bid 5. So bid 3 and start to low bid them, get the honor, swing the honor. It also protects you from being low bid yourself. This deck doesn't do that well if they low bid, because yeah, sure, you have way more cards in hand than they do, and so they can't really fight you that well. But at the same time, if you're not breaking, it becomes really hard to deal with like 13 honor, and so you don't want to get low bid in this deck. It's much better to bid equally than for them to low bid you once and never get to low bid them yourself. So turn 1, ideally you're getting ring of earth, ring of air. Sometimes you have to do void, sometimes you have to do fire. Sometimes I really don't do water very much unless I'm unbowing my own guy after defending. But ring of water just feels bad on turn 1. I'd rather be getting it's like yeah great, they don't get an attack. I'd rather just take the best ring. I'd rather take ring of earth and be like, well, I don't care what ring you're getting because I got ring of earth and you're not getting it. So then, turn 2, you can one bid them if you've got the cards for it. If you've got some dishonor stuff, if you think you can do 3 points worth of dishonor to them, you got some hawk tattoos, you've got some fate worse than death, you've got some way to force the unopposed conflict. Then yeah, go for the one bid. The nice thing about this deck is a lot of the cards in it are very high value, high cost cards. So I can often do as much or more with an 8 card hand as you can do with a 10 or 12 card hand. Not always, not always. You do have to be aware of what your opponent could do. You got to try to play around it, but you can do a lot with a small hand in this deck archetype. So then it's about the grind, right? So they start having to make suboptimal plays just to survive. You are trying to assassinate and marauding Oni and calling in favors and spies at court and forged edict as quickly as you can while maintaining tempo and making good trades so that you can low bid them and then go back under them and steal from them with the stronghold again. You really it's fine if one turn you don't get to use the stronghold, but you really need to be using the stronghold basically every turn. Like sometimes I get in that situation where I'm at 11 honor and they're at 3. It's like, well, I'm not going to draw 5 cards just so that I can steal from them. But man, this sucks. The way the deck works is that you don't have a lot of buffs, but what you do have a lot of is guys, and they're cheap. And so you can get a lot of unopposed, they either invest in one big guy, which runs a very strong risk of you just fucking it in various ways, or they run a bunch of little guys, which makes it hard for them to build up a strategy over time. They're probably not running Assassinate, and you probably are definitely running three. So if they invest in little guys, that's pretty good for you. And ideally, you choke off their card draw really early. And then because they're in a bad situation where they're about to lose the game, they have to use their cards to defend and to stop you from doing what you want to do. And Scorpion is really, really good at trading limited numbers of cards. Like, I'm happy to trade, my Forged Edict, Fate Worse Than Death, my Assassinate, and my Calling in Favors for whatever four cards in your hand those can be messed with by. But I can only do that for a little while, both because my our Scorpion cards are very expensive in terms of a lot of them require you to dishonor somebody. They cost a lot of fate, whatever. You have to have like people on the board who you can still dishonor, or a lot of fate to use a lot of these, or honor. Assassination like has a high cost. A lot of the Scorpion cards really do have a very high cost. They're just very effective if you can pay it. And Scorpion kind of cheats by using some of your opponent's honor to pay for their exorbitant gangster fees. So ideally you get them down to 3 honor on turn 2, and then you just go for the kill. You try to get the unopposed heir with the Fate Worse Than Death to force them not to defend. Or if they double defend because they're expecting it, then you're like, okay, cool. I just don't even take this conflict, and I'm just gonna, you just double defended. I'm gonna hawk Poon. I'm gonna hawk tattoo your third guy in there, so you're really defending that, and then I'm gonna get another unopposed fire, and hopefully kill some guys or something. I don't know. You can also do you can attack first with ring, with another very threatening ring, like Ring of Earth or Ring of Water. And when they block that, you can Hawk Tattoo people in, and then go for the Ring of Air, cast some commies, kill them, whatever. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, and part of what's fun about playing this deck is that there are so many different permutations of play lines. Kami Unleashed is really versatile. Cunning Magistrate is really versatile. Hawk Tattoo can be used in a lot of different ways. Cloud the Mind is always a really interesting choice about what you use it on. This stuff is more, Deceptive Offer does require some subtlety. A lot, Assassination is always a really interesting one. Do I just like assassinate as fast as I can to get value, or do I just wait for that juicy target? I definitely sometimes choose not to assassinate because I'm like, they're just not doing enough to make it worth it for me. So I'll just save it for next turn. I'll get another little guy. This deck. So why play this deck? Well, it's fun. It's like a puzzle every time, and it's super satisfying. There are definitely games where it's like I did not have the favor even once this entire game. Like I had like a 6-turn game against Crane that he had the favor every single turn, and he broke 2 provinces. But in the end, like I just had too many cards, and he didn't have enough cards. He was down to 0 cards, and I was at like 3 or 4. And Fate Worse Than Death is really good in the late game when you both have 2 honor. And he just he was like doing his best, but there's nothing you can do about it, and he just died. And so you can kind of get wrecked like really hard for a lot of the game, and then just be like, it doesn't matter because I'm going to win. You do, if you're in a tournament setting, you do have to be on your opponent to make decisions. You gotta give them 20 seconds and then be like, please choose your action, because you might need, if your opponent is smart enough. Oftentimes I end the game on turn 3 or 4, especially against newer players, so people who aren't as good at playing against Scorpion, people who aren't as good at playing against Dishonor, people who aren't as good at playing their faction. This deck gives your opponent a lot. It just kind of crams the Dishonor down their throat, and it's like, hey, you have to make a shit ton of decisions, and they all really matter. Good luck, go. It's really good in a tournament because it requires a lot from your opponent. And I mean, it requires a lot from you too, but in a different way. Because if you play this deck sometimes, you should be familiar with the rhythm of it. The rhythm of getting a bunch of guys out, attacking them a lot, and trying to fuck up their plans and make everything go haywire. It disrupts a lot of synergy decks, and it chokes card draw. Choking card draw is really important. You should be aware that this deck and all Scorpion decks, I think, are pretty weak to Dragon. If the Dragon pilots it without mistakes, like Mind's Desire, I'm going to say you're probably going to lose like 7 out of 10 games, if not more, depending on RNG and whether you make mistakes. But most Dragon players aren't really that good. And the great thing about this deck is it puts a huge amount of pressure on your opponent to not misplay in the first 2 or 3 turns. Even 1 or 2 even small misplays can really just mean like, well, now you die. And it also puts a lot of pressure on them at a time when they don't have a lot of resources. Like I found when I get to turn 3 and 4 and we're just bidding 5 all the time, my opponent has a hand of like 12, 13, 14 cards. They have a lot of different tools. I much prefer when they have a hand of 3 cards and don't have a lot of choices about what tools they have. I find that it's a lot harder for them to make their game plan work, and it's a lot easier for me to disrupt it, which is what Scorpion's good at. So I really try to choke the honor as early as possible so that I can control the game more easily and more reliably. Um, yeah, so this deck is fun. It's aggressive. It should win fairly fast a lot of the time. I think it, I mean, all Scorpion decks are a little bit fatiguing because you are thinking a lot about what they might have in their hand and how you can play around it. But I think in terms of like easy to use decks, I think maybe in a certain sense because it has so much protection and disruption, it is a little bit less stressful than playing some other blitz military decks. It has a lot of flexibility and a lot of options, so I really enjoy it. I think it's good in a tournament setting because it just puts so much pressure on your opponent not to make mistakes, and especially in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh rounds of the Swiss, people are going to be tired. It's going to be hard to think, and they're going to have a hard time. But you got to remember, it's on you to keep the game going at a good pace. And that means playing quickly, making decisions quickly, and also asking your opponent to do the same and calling a judge if they choose not to. Because it is possible, if the player knows what's up, if they're a Discord League player, if they play a lot of Scorpion and they know what you're doing, they're going to try to stall out the game. They'll try to break one province and stall out the game, like maybe because it's hard to have the favor for whatever reason. I think it's just because I often choose to lose conflicts to waste my opponent's resources, but it's really hard to get for me to get the favor outside of Fawning Diplomat, and I usually just don't want to buy Fawning Diplomat all that much. So if they've got one province broken and the Fawning Diplomat, or and the Imperial favor, then they're guaranteed at worst a mod win if you don't break any provinces, and I often don't. Really, this deck is looking for the one safe province. There's nothing wrong with breaking provinces. I just don't find a need because I'm not timed on Jikoku. Um, and it takes more resources, so unless it's easy, I'm generally not going to do it. I'm looking for one safe province, and I'm just going to attack that province all game long with as many different weenies as I can. I think that's mostly the deck tech. Let's cut that.